Yeah, whatever side of the
Hey everybody, I'm Idiot Vig, and this
fine
is
by me.
Backgammon Made Complicated.
Okay, 9.
Today we are going to be talking through some live play from my local club, the New England Backgammon Club. This was their monthly tournament, March 2024. I'm playing in the Open Division. This is the main draw, round of 16. There were 13 or 14 total entrants in the round of 16, as well as the quarterfinals. It is a 9-point match. Semifinals are 11, and finals are 13. It's a double elimination tournament with a separate consolation draw, so losers get knocked down into the consolation and play 5-point matches all the way through.
Enjoy the match, Steve.
Yes, good luck.
Steve opens with a standard 6-3.
I got the clocks too.
Oh, yeah.
What happened there? Hang on a second. There we go. Okay. Cool. Excellent. All right, we're rolling.
And coming back with the 2-1, you definitely want to hit and split from the midpoint. Most of the time when your opponent makes a major split, that is to the 4-5 or bar with the opening roll, you're going to want to hit and play from the midpoint in response, with few exceptions. Steve hits back with a 3-6. And now I get my choice of blots to hit. Electing to make the most gains in the race by hitting on the 15. Steve gets to enter with a 4 and has a very awkward 6 to choose from. Anything leaves more shots. If he touches either of the back checkers, he can at least minimize his blots to the 3 that are on the board. And in this case,
so you entered
both
and then,
16 and 13 7 end up being a toss-up. So many options. I mean, you can make a 4-point. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can hit twice.
Wondering some variant
usually
of
in
that
the
question
outfield.
with different adjectives.
You can safety the checker on the 15, but that doesn't really seem like a priority. Like we have doubles that are going to allow us to hit and make good points. So the question is, do we want to play 11 and 9, 7 squared, 11 and 9, make the 5-point? This is there are a lot of options here, and it's kind of easy to overplay doubles, and it's something that I do all the time. I tell myself, don't overplay doubles.
Famous last words.
I'd like to think that it works. This time it did, but a lot of times I try to stuff 5 rolls into 4, and that's just that's not a good play. It's something that ends up losing equity when you spread yourself too thinly around the board and try to do too much with the roll. Sometimes you just have to look for 2 quality assets, or rather 1 or 2 quality moves that your doubles can make, and try not to do everything. So in that case, I hit loose on the 9-point and made the 5. Steve enters with a 4 and safeties the checker, playing at a 13-point. This is almost a toss-up with hitting. He's still got a whole bunch of blots. It's still a 1-point board for Steve. I understand the reluctance not to hit. 6-1 tidies up nicely. And the 6-4 lets Steve make the 2-point. With 5-1, I kind of hate the fact that if I'm playing bar 20, 6-5 is my ace. So I elect for entering on the 24 and playing to the 8-point, but XG does like the extra flexibility and pressure of stepping up, even if it means pushing the blot to an undesired 5-point instead of being on the 6. And with 4s, Steve chooses rightly from a whole bunch of reasonable-looking alternatives. And I have to figure out what to do with double 2s. Stepping up with 2 of them is clear, but how do we play the last 2? Play 9-7 squared, play 13-9, play 11 and 6, but that just seems like offering shots for free and is me filling any kind of dead air while we watch me struggle at this over the board. And I elected to play making the bar point with the remaining 2. XG kind of likes, well, doesn't kind of like, definitely likes just simply bringing a checker down to the 9 point instead. Then with 2-1, Steve's going to play down to the 11 point, staying out of direct range, and give himself an extra attacker. I split for the 6 point. I was considering doubling there. As a fleeting fancy, you can see that it's nowhere near where it needs to be. There's no gammon threat. It's still pretty much 50-50. I'm taking whatever equity I have from the cube being in the center and tossing it over to my opponent if I were to ship it that early. XG kind of like shuffling the spares around instead of stacking the 6 point. It's probably better. I'm not totally sure what I was thinking at the time. With this 5-2, Steve makes a reasonable looking play, but XG just likes pulling 2 down. I guess you still have some outfield control without giving up the occasional fly shot, the midpoint isn't really a parking spot for your two-back checker, for Steve's two-back checkers on the 21. It's it's going to be tough escaping one of those at a time, so really just big sets get them out or fly shots do. So there's not much value in keeping the mid with just 2 checkers left at this point in the game. I struggle with this 6-5 and toy around with maybe bringing 2 out or playing 21-10 or finding different ways, and eventually just settle on the safety. This turns out being best by a wide margin. Bringing 2 out is a play that can be right in certain circumstances, but not when I was down the 13 pips that we were looking at. The 6-3, Steve has limited safe options, or I guess safe options, singular. But is it best? Is this a good time to get the back checker moving? Perhaps because it also allows him to make his 3-point. And this does end up being the best play. This was a real problem for me over the board. It was not clear what my objectives were. I really want to hit on the 10-point, but I really hate leaving a blot on the mid. Now there's just a whole bunch of vulnerabilities all over the board. So, I can just simply play 6-3, but that can be kind of tough to clean up, I felt. And then there's this other play, which stalls him, gives me a chance at a second checker when I'm missed, and will let me still make the 5-point later. So I spend some time looking at the hit and cover. I don't spend nearly enough time looking at the very simple just 6-3. And my creativity was richly rewarded. We can see here that my fears are unfounded, even with the significant amount of gammon losses it gives up by playing 13-10. It still ends up being close on equity from the extra wins and gammon losses that you get. Steve hits back with a 4-1, and then entering with the 2-1, coming in on the ace point, and playing 6-4. Steve ships over the cube. This is a powerhouse. His position is right. Mine is fragmented. He's currently up 36 pips in the race, 151-115. But he has a lot of work to do. He has a couple of blots strewn about and some strip points that are not going to be easy to bring home. So there still is a fair amount of play that's left in this game. The first game of a 9-point match. This plays exactly like money. So you ask yourself, what would I do in the shoe at? And ultimately I end up taking, it's in the window, and Steve throws double ones. Anytime you throw doubles and you have a fair number of points in your board and your opponent has a blot, you want to at least start by considering the switch and then looking for other alternatives. And the switch meaning to switch points here. So playing 2-1 squared. So yeah, switching kind of is instinctual to me just because it's so difficult to get stuff done with points that brittle that Steve has. And yeah, the switch, the 2 switches come out a mile ahead, nothing else is worthy of consideration. With the 4-6, anything else breaks my board, so I just pop on out And lucky me,
Nearly.
I get missed. And Steve has this 5-4 to play. Playing 13-8 2016 is no good because it gives you the double shot, so you may as well just run it here. I like Steve's play at 20-11, as does the computer. With 5-4, I can't hit back. I'd like to stick around and just be a nuisance out there, but that's way too many shots and Steve's board is way too big, so I just simply have to safety the checker on the 15 point and cover the 4. 4-2 makes the 9 point, and for a position that is as vulnerable to sixes as this one is, you want to be looking for other points of making in the outfield, especially something that it's connected bonus points if it blocks big numbers like 5s or 6s, particularly 6s. So I see a roll like 4-2. I'm thinking about playing directly to the 9 point instead. This 11-5 isn't terrible. It's still pretty flexible. It dissuades jumping out. This is me confused, not seeing what's happening just because I have 9 squared in my head so much. That's not me being a jerk. That's me being very, very, very dumb. I just couldn't follow what was going on because I got stuck to the vision of my own head. I get to make the 5 point, and Steve comes back with a nearly automatic 13-2 with his 6-5, and now I'm super speedier than I want to be. Currently, the pip count is I've got 123 and Steve's got 96. That's a difference of 27. So I'm still down 7 on roll. Now, if I pop out to the 16 point from here, I'm making it a lot easier, not just for Steve to pass me with 4 rolls. Well, 5s and 6s make up 4 rolls, and also double 2s and double 3s play pretty well. But I also make it convenient for him to be able to pay now when he absolutely has to. So instead, I make the 3 point. And other kinds of butts around and make 3-ish point looking plays are reasonable alternatives. Steve's played with the 5-1, leaving himself a little further back to clear. It ends up not being as straightforward as just simply pulling 2 down, making it able to safety your checker with a 6 on the next roll. I roll 4-3, slot in the ace point. Steve rolls 4-3, add into his 6 point. And now with my double 5s, I've got to break the back checker unless I seriously want to cannibalize my own position. Only down 17 in the race before this roll. I'm not looking to stick around. I am going to have some racing chances. The question is it more efficient for me to play to the 11 point twice, or for me to play 21-6, 21-16? Usually the computer likes playing 21, the kind of play where you're not moving the back checkers twice, you're moving one back checker once and the other back checker 3 times. So I can't totally claim to know why it comes out best, but it's the kind of thing you see enough and you just sort of learn it. It's a play in your arsenal. And I like to make the play that turned out just slightly best. Steve pulls 2 in with 6-4. And with a 6-1, I get 1 crossover with the 6 and play inefficiently with the ace. On 4-2, Steve's just going to bring in and bear off. And now we're into the very nearly automatic portion of the game, so I can sound extra confident in all of the analyses that I provide from this point. Oh, he bore 2 off. Oh, how about that? Oh, I wonder if I'll do the same. Ah, yes. Yeah, very savvy plays here. Sometime I will have something a little bit more interesting to say during all this, but in the meantime, let's just enjoy the vagaries of randomness and see who comes out on top. No real difference between. I guess there's a small benefit to have an extra spare on the ace. If you throw 2 aces and bear off from there, those are some slim permutations, but every little bit counts in the bear off. You know, with 6-3, you want to play the 3 first because that allows you to take the 6 off from the 5 point, and you have the resultant structure ends up being more flexible than playing 6 off 5-2. Rip 2 3s.
Duly noted. For the record, that one was a makeup, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't feel bad.
I nothing wrong with calling it. I want to make sure we're applying the right labels is all.
I like to think that I'm funny.
2 more to play.
And 5-3 2 off ends up being a little bit better here. Probably should have looked at that a little bit longer. And onward and upward.
2 for you.
Steve wins first game. He's up 2-0.
Center.
You got a couple of double
Sneak
fives
preview.
in
The
there.
next game starts with a 6-4.
Yeah. Some 5s, some 3s.
Something on the head is what it was.
I guess if they're not in the bear off, it doesn't matter quite as much.
Yeah.
Well, if not in the bear off and it doesn't lead to a cash, it doesn't matter quite as much.
True.
2 for you. Thank you so much.
No,
Appreciate it.
I know because before I was here, looking at things.
Here you go.
There we go. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
reloaded with Nectar of the Gods, ready to play more backgammon.
Black wins 6-4.
For the monthly tournaments, I will enjoy some beverages just to make sure to give business back to the establishment that's kind enough for hosting us. That is King's Lanes in Lynnfield, Massachusetts. But it's also a cheap justification for me to enjoy my Sundays even more than I have. Hit back with 5-1. Steve enters with a 5-3, and there's a bunch of ways that you can play this. You can play 22 and 8. You can play 20 and 10. You don't want to slot your own inner board just yet, however, but any of those plays all end up coming out reasonably here. 3-2, well, it's more flexible to make the 4 point. Obviously, you're going to put a guy up on the roof. And Steve throws an interesting 6-3. And by interesting, I mean awful. It's interesting when it happens to your opponent. It's whatever your favorite expletive is when it happens to you. And with the 6, he steps up, and I kind of thought at the time that this was taking on some extra risk. I wasn't sure if I was in the window, but it felt close. And sure enough, XG likes, just simply stepping out to the 16 point instead. So I elect to roll, and it ends up being a small double
This
here.
isn't enough.
Apparently I need 5.
Yeah.
And then I get a lucky shot in the outfield. So I think, okay, great, Steve can't hit. He can't anchor anything. I've lost my market. I'm just going to go ahead and cash this. And, but sometimes your opponent may make a play you're not expecting. You always need to reevaluate after every single roll. In this case, it ends up that they're all the same. Steve does make the best cubeless play. They'll end up being fairly equal. But I ship it, he takes, and it ends up being a small pass. The gammon chances are very high, but he's winning a third of the time, so completely understand the take. I was regretting having not doubled the turn prior. I like to hit twice on 21 and bar points for the bar points in 3. Steve enters. I get my choice of points that I want to make. There's no real reason to make the 3 here for the same reason we wanted to make the 5 earlier with our 3-2. I'm just getting them all.
Yeah.
Nothing to it. Sit back, roll your jokers, play the next match. Easy game, this backgammon. All right. right, now that Steve's got an anchor, he's in a much more decent spot, but that also increases the premium on making sure he avoids a second anchor, so I definitely want to hit freely with any 5. The 3, you can take your pick here. XG likes 13 to 10, but they're all pretty much reasonable except for 6 to 3. Steve keeps padding on to the deuce point. I'm great as long as I don't get hit, but I don't get that cover. With 4-3, there's not a convenient way to do anything with the checker on the 21. So I could maybe play 16 to 13, 9 to 5, or just make the 9 point. And I elected to play the 9 point. Or excuse me, slot the 9 rather, excuse me. So I gave myself some extra builders looking at the 7. That was not the backgammon that I thought was happening in my head. Steve comes out rightly with the 6-2, scary as it looks, just because getting any extra checkers sent back is a terrible prospect in and of itself. With this 6-3, I'm sort of short on options, can't safety again the checker on the 21 point, but at least I can do one thing and make myself a 5-point board. Sometimes a Pyrrhic victory is the only victory you got, he says, still a huge favorite in the game with massive gammon chances. 5-1, there's no way for Steve to safety his checker on the 17 by itself, so he can either play 23 to 17 or hit and then play to the 11 point. Here, like, if you just make the 17 point, it doesn't feel like you really have a game plan next roll. I'm going to do whatever I want. You're still going to continue to be vulnerable. At least this starts to turn the tide a little bit. With a 3-6, I can either disconnect my back checkers by playing 21 to 15,
Dupe 'em.
or dupe
That means
4s
cue
and
the
2s
doubles.
as I so rightly called over the board.
Nearly called it.
Actually, he doesn't give a crap. They're both about the same. Don't fuss too much over technical plays, unless you are trying to fill dead air looking at your matches while you're uploading something.
1-2.
Then it's plausible. With these deuces, nothing else to do with the 2s but play 2 down. Having the 11 point isn't great, but it is better than all other alternatives. 6-4 runs nicely. The 2 point not a serious consideration here. I got me a run and roll, and with a modest 62 pip lead, all I'm going to do is keep on running. I don't need to worry about picking up extra checkers yet. I've still got decent gammon chances as it is.
You think I can't leave a shot from here, Steve? I can leave a shot from here. Challenge accepted.
Famous last words.
Look at this.
This is...
Yay.
Okay, so some shots have been eliminated. Not all shots have been eliminated, but some.
Both of us pad on or make our respective 5 points. I get to see a little bit of daylight at the cost of only a handful of indirects. Everything is going nicely. Maybe I can luck box my way to a gammon. We're going to have to see. Steve down 61 here, so stepping forward to the 17 point is a fine way to expedite handing your opponent 2 points. Anything reasonable looks right here. 7 squared, 2 squared is good. I guess you can play 17 squared. Yeah, all right. If you're making the bar point as well, I still do have 2 checkers to clean up. I don't know. It just feels like such a concession. We're talking about a minuscule amount of winning chances either way.
Here, I would just rather not.
No, I have a 6-4 to play, and I have a safe option, and that's pretty much all I have. Leaving indirects now is a prospect I don't want to face. Steve has a 3-point board, and he's on a precipice of making a 4th. Yes, he would have to use his whole roll to hit me in the outfield, and yes, I would have return shots, and yes, I do pick up some extra equity in those sequences, but it's not something that I'm really excited about and looking forward to. Time to just start ripping, right? Right? Maybe? Well, what do I do? 5 for sure. We're going to rip. But what do I do with the ace? Like, how many... what do my gammon chances look like here? So I'm going to count my opponent's crossovers. Steve's got to play his back checkers, 2, 4, 6 crossovers. Got his back checkers in, 8 for the one on his mid, 10 for the ones on the bar, and then an 11th crossover to finally bear one checker off. So I've definitely got some reasonable gammon chances here. And as flexible as 5 to 4 is, ripping off a second checker does give me more gammon. So we can see that. Boy, I sounded so confident and sure of myself when I said that, but it turns out it ends up being almost exactly the same. I get 1/10 more gammons at the cost of 2/10 extra losses. Right down the middle, exactly where it needs to be. There's no difference. With the 5-1 XG, likes something a little bit more flexible with 8 and 4, but I understand Steve's play. I think it looks totally fine. With 3-1, now it's time for me to start clearing my 6-point. Again, I preferred taking a checker off. Bot likes giving us some flexibility going forward. Steve makes his 4-point with a 2-1. I clear my 6 with a 6 deuce.
Something, something. Now he's ready.
Now he's ready.
You have to be.
I don't think there's anything to complain about with your timing there. I think if you had to have 2 men back and make a closed board, this is just about the time you want to do that.
That's right. You tell your opponent how grateful they are to be in the spot that they're in when you're a 93% favorite. Absolutely, Brad. Great job there. Steve scoots with a 6-5, and I am just still trying to be as greedy as possible and as safe as possible all in the same go.
Focus now. Concentrate.
I need to get the alpha backgammon brainwaves cooking.
You can do it. You can do it.
Oh, I was focusing on the 6, but a 6 is plural. I got that. That's part of the equation too. I missed
I
that.
think I'm
So
using.
basic.
I am not. Steve slots the bar. All routine stuff.
I got a 6.
You can't stick around
It was
because
a lovely party. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah.
you can save yourself some gammons from scooting, and Steve finds the right play. Here I'm just gonna rip. And it's either 2 or 4. Oh,
Whatever expletives you got, come on, come on.
that's right. That's right.
They're warranted.
Steve, respectful gentleman that he
42.
is, elected not to take me up on my offer of lobbing expletives at me over the board after that 4-4.
I know the pendulum's gonna swing.
This is
It's all gonna bounce out.
I believe in that too. We may disagree on the number of rolls it takes to get there, but fundamentally I agree with what you're saying. Okay, 4-2.
And we take 4-2 lead in the match. 5 away, 7 away. Not great scores for either player. You want to prioritize. Well, sorry. You're not as incentivized to win gammons nearly as much as
No
you are other
satisfying
scores.
flock
You're pretty
galaxy
happy when
sound
you
to go
pick up
with
a single
that.
point and get yourself a 4 away or even 6 away as the trailer. And with 4-6, I can pop out to the 18-point, but again, it's sort of like the other game before I missed that cube, where it just leaves you a little bit too vulnerable. Steve throws 4-4, and you can do things on both sides of the board. I would not be able to resist the Siren Song and making the 5-point, but you do have some badly disconnected back checkers, and you have a good chance to make your opponent's 5-point while putting pressure on either by making the 4 or bringing down from the 9-point. And yeah, XG does prefer stepping up from the 24-point with 2 of the 4s. 2-1, nothing better to do than to safety up and slot the 5. Hope I can avoid a shot. Steve does miss a pretty big cube here. You got lots of Lots of attacks, lots of chances. Just because the gammon price isn't
Or
right doesn't mean it's not a good cube when there's the action.
They are still with me.
And,
I expected them to leave after the MSC.
That was a good cube right there. I joker my butt off once more, throwing
Joker
aces,
month.
coming in, making the 5 point, or completing the 5 point, and making the bar all in one go. Steve plays bar 21, 10, 9. And XG likes splitting the back men. It's going to be a little bit easier to make an advanced anchor, which you kind of really need right now before I bring a 10th checker into the zone. 3-2, just going to make the 4 point. Steve puts on his dancing shoes. I hem and haw for a moment.
I'll drop.
And Steve finds the pass.
5-2.
Onward and upward, 5-2. That's a game I could feel great about at 5 away. Now I'm at 4 away. Gammons are great. Double gammons give me the match. Winning a 2 cube that, being able to take 2 cubes that aren't terribly volatile. These are all things that I'm thinking about when I'm 4 away.
If you want to wash, I got other dice in there if you want to wash.
Steve tries
Use
talking to
your
the
own
dice.
too. If you need more pep talks,
I understand.
that's all right. I'm good with all
We've
of
all
it.
been there.
All right.
You cannot play backgammon if you have not talked to the dice.
You
Fact.
talk to the black one, not the white one. The white one is the troublemaker.
That's true.
And we both start off with decent shakes. I make the bar. Steve makes his 4. Decent shakes continue as a 5-3 comes out. I'm going to
They're
make
like
3
twins.
point
You
with
gotta talk
that.
to them all the time the exact same way. Otherwise, they're each going to do diabolical stuff. I should know. I'm a fraternal twin.
My wife and I play Yahtzee every day, and we swear they have little ears and they're listening. Talk to them.
I would also personify the dice if I played Yahtzee long term. Absolutely, 100%.
XG like splitting the backmen with the 3-2. You do want to think about getting them going before I start solidifying my position. See, now after this 5-1, it's a lot tougher. And this is a difficult 6-2. You can clean everything up with 13 to 11, 10 to 4. It feels really strange to sort of front load the 4 point like that, but you're already looking at a lot of dangers and a lot of containment on the other side of the board, so you really don't want to get hit. Steve elects to tempt fate by coming out by playing 11 and 9 with the deuce. This is something that ends up, losing a lot more and even giving up an extra percent's worth of gammons. Well, what's it matter? Because I miss, nothing for me to do but sigh and scoot all the way to the 14 point. 6-4. You want to come out to the 14 point, but you're just gonna see a big fat cube in your face at that point and have a very, very difficult decision. So, is there a play that
Constantine, how's it going?
ends up accomplishing more than just, leaping into the frying pan and other kinds of cliches that I am so badly struggling for and cannot recall right now. You can just make the 2 point. You do leave a couple of indirect shots in the outfield, but it's an asset. It's something. It accomplishes the most with this roll. 14 is not that terrible. Again, I don't like it. Yeah, this is a bunch here. All right, so I'm definitely thinking about the cube, and I'm not at a place where I can do enough. I've got too many liabilities. I've got blots in the outfield. I don't have enough board points made. It's just, and there's not really a market loser. If you can't think of many sequences where you've got reasonable amounts of shakes that would yield a double and a pass next roll, that's not something where you should be touching the cube. And after some hesitation, I make the 3-1, or make the 5 point with the 3-1, which is much, much more important than just simply safe game and checker. Steve makes a bar point, and now I've got a much better position. I don't many blots in the outfield. Well, once again, I was too zealous. Like, I haven't done everything yet.
You tell me how to do that.
You've been quite good at
I need
predicting
more
my
wins or
jokers.
more
I kinda
gammons.
have
My
to
attack
expect
isn't
to hear
quite as
some
potent
crap.
as I think it is.
You've been very prescient today, Steve.
Yeah.
6-4, I leap. 6-5,
direction.
Steve slots
This
some
is-
points.
Look, if you're gonna split hairs,
And now I've got out safe. I can just worry about containment as safely as I possibly can. So what I'd love to be able to do is play illegally and pull all 5 checkers down from my outfield without Steve noticing, but he is too savvy for that, and also he would properly let me know that might be against the rules. So instead, just make the 10-point play 13-5.
Right.
It's 4-2, you're going to cover the point, find some deuce, which in this case is just 4-2. 13-11 is no good.
blurf.
Blurf indeed.
Below
This
average.
is the safest play is 8-3, 6-5. That takes a spare off your 6. Front loads your prime. It's safe, but it's not terribly flexible.
She really, really hates this 1/18th of the time.
Playing 10-5, 8-7 does look a lot better.
Oh, that's so stiff.
It's a lot more flexible, but
so
you know,
stiff.
obviously 1/18th of the time, it's going to suck a
I don't
lot.
want gammons. I kind of hate losing.
And after a fair bit here, I elected to make the safe play. But I mean, this is really an extreme. Like you're obviously going to want to gravitate towards making the safe kind of play when you've got a huge racing lead, and it's 15 pips before this roll. But this gives you an idea of just how badly you can break your position and still have it come out fairly close to
I can
being
be more
right.
belligerent if you want, Albert.
Everybody feels sleepy.
It's strange how that works, isn't it? Maybe there's a positive correlation there. Maybe.
After the best play, life sucks with 3-6, but you're in a much better spot to at least make the 4-point, shore up your outfield. This plays much more easily coming home. All right, with 5-3, Steve's got a difficult decision. You can just kind of hold the fort by pulling 2 down, but you know, what do you do for an encore? You still have 2 checkers stuck back on the 24-point, and they're not coming home. So this is a scary place to try to pop out. But from Steve's perspective, I've only got a 3-point board, and he's got a 5-point board. So you know, this is the kind of time where that difference in relative safety, you can play more boldly as a result. So 24-16 is you know, just the kind of play that you want to look at. 24-21, 13-8. Yeah, I guess it's equivalent. I'm never playing this. I'm just going to come out with 1. Pull 2 down with 6-5. And with this 3-2, I don't know, maybe slot the bar. See, now stepping up is a little bit more dangerous. I mean, you still have your own potent board, and there's still a need to be able to hop out. But in this case, because you've left 2 blots in the inner board, both in range of all of your opponent's checkers, it doesn't have all the benefits it did the prior roll. With 3-2, you want to be able to swat back. You can't swat. Choose the only safe play, playing from the 10-point. At least you got our 4 prime. Looking at a potential 6 prime until Steve throws 6-3. At this point in the race, it's Steve's got 103, I've got 85. Now this roll takes it to a 28 pip difference. Excuse me, sorry, it was 9 pips before that roll. So now that made it 19. Steve with a 2-1 just slots his ace point.
Really blowing the tops off
Yeah,
this.
this is less of a race, more of a walk, a saunter home, if you will.
Yes.
So there are a lot of
Let me look at
options
this
here.
real quick. He said, not having done one real quick thing the entire match.
Okay, so let's take a look at some of the final possessions here. What you're seeing on screen is how I ended up playing it. Sorry for the spoilers. this ends up being a little bit worse than just clearing the bar point. I got to admit, I don't totally get why. I'm going to have to go back and look more at that later.
Not the worst. Double threes would have given the almighty shrug for sure.
Steve tidies up with 2-1, and I throw an appropriate reply.
Pouring it on there with a 5.
4-3, I really want to be able to take a checker off here, but I hate the idea of leaving
feels so
5
human,
behind
doesn't it,
his
right?
blot. You know, if I make the 2 point, I'm not taking a checker off, but, you know, maybe there are some switch numbers later, or I can at least put him on the roof of the
there's other
4-point
shots
board
to be
if I
left
throw a
other
shot
ways.
leaving number next
More
turn.
shots to be left. No, the same shots to be left other ways. Live by the bot, die by the human.
Turns
I
out
played
both were right
Descartes
this time.
backgammon. I blunder, therefore I am.
Micro plays.
I'm still not going to bear off a checker 4 away with the opponent owning a 2 cube. Surely that's right.
Brad did not notice he had already borne off 1 checker. He did notice that he had put his beard just down, however. Stevie gets a 5-4 here and pops out, and I think this was just slightly premature. Like sticking around for 1 more turn.
Pour it on. Brad. Pour it on.
This is, I mean, if I continue with 2 1s ad infinitum, I like your odds this game.
Uh-huh. And then again,
This is,
That was not a 2-1.
maybe I'm just a prick, Steve. Who knows?
I haven't seen any of those.
You have not, actually. You have seen very, very few.
I wouldn't know what that feels
If
like.
only we had the randomness of computer games. Alas, we are stuck to the unknown random number
And-
generation of the death box.
Rolling this one out to the bitterest of
Combines,
ends.
Oh,
Always
look
want to
at
make
that.
sure you're rolling until it's gin, because you never know
Gets
when
that
you'll
roll.
get the 2-1 when you expected literally anything else.
How'd you do?
And this is gin, but what the heck. Go 1 more sequence. Having a fun time. Nobody gets hurt.
Oh, the feeling.
I've been doing less playing and more rolling.
He's on fire. Stole the last one from me with 7 doubles. You know, I had to leave finally one of the game.
Yep.
And moving on to 7-2. 2 away, 7 away.
Sure.
This can be a difficult score. Being exactly 2 away,
the match is
big
not
away,
over.
is sort of a weird spot to be in, because you know you're going to see a lot of cubes come at you, and they're you know.
Yeah, the cube I took the first 2 he gave me.
You get a dead cube. When you accept a value of the cube where you can't legally send it back, you're just sitting there. You're sitting on it. Your opponent can take advantage of gammons, but you yourself can't. So, you know, you'll see even more action doubles than you normally will. You know, you can throw doubles yourself, but you're going to want to wait for non-contact positions, things where you know you end up being a bigger. Bigger favor than you normally would be for money. You know, most time I think at this score it'd have to be something like low to mid 80% to have to double here.
That didn't last long.
But yeah, it can be a tricky spot. So you know, ultimately you're looking to either blitz and win a gammon yourself, or you know, take a 2 cube that isn't too gammonish and just snake out a single game from there.
Thursday night,
But it can be unnerving. You can sit there at 2 away and watch your opponent go from 7 to 5 to 3 to 2. Now you're at DMP. So it's a difficult spot to play from, but it's certainly in a better spot than being like 3 away, 7 away instead.
Dougie was plus 47.
You know, when you're in a spot that can be even more awkward as far as the cube is concerned, it can be difficult to
Earlier,
play too with that lead.
John said he
At least with
played
being
on
2 away, when you have a dead cube, that's fairly straightforward in terms of evaluations. You just need to sort of statically evaluate your winning chances and the opponent's gammon chances. And not much else matters.
He wouldn't put it
3
on.
away, you've got to consider things like your recube vig, which is almost always nil, and your gammon value ends up being just pretty much what it is normally. So you're not, it's
7-2.
it's not a terrible adjustment, but it's not the most comfortable spot in the play. Not the most comfortable spot to play either. All right, we get back into the action. Steve throws a 4-2, making his 4-point. I throw a 1-1 because I have been rolling like a god.
There's the 3.
And XG still likes stepping forward with this. Obviously you want to make the 5-point, but how you play the last 2, I thought I needed to start making a prime, so I just made the bar point almost reflexively. Steve gets 3s, rightly makes the 21 and the 5-point, and I extend my prime with a 3-2. A 3-1, nothing better to do than to pull one down, diversify. And now an interesting set of 3s. The first 2 are easy. You can play 13-10 squared, but now what? You can't really bury any checkers behind your opponent's anchor. You can keep on playing to the bar point, and that keeps the mid intact. However, the 10-point is a very, very useful blocker for the opponent. And if you play 13-7 squared, like what we're looking at right now, Steve can escape with 5s, with 6s, and it's a lot easier for him to do. If I overload that point, even though I don't necessarily want to do that, I'm still blocking 6s, and that's huge. Steve just makes his 10-point with 2-1. 4-5 again, can't escape. I could start slotting the 2 or the 1-point, but that feels too far forward, so instead I just pull 2 in. Steve gives it a think and ships a very appropriate double again. Look, this is super low. Like the winning chances are 61%. Gammon chances just barely over what it is at the start of the game, and still a super appropriate double here. We are very much in the window. This is the effect shipping a dead cube has. You just need modest winning chances and modest gammon chances, and those kinds of cubes are absolutely right. Steve plays 8-4 with his 6-2. And now with a 3-1.
Dare ya.
All right, I'll move it to the 2-point, but only because you dared me, Steve. Just because
Steve
of
dares
that, no
me
other reason.
to split to the 23-point, and I was actually kind of considering it, and he talked me out of it the last second. Don't let your opponents rattle you. Good on you, Steve, for getting into my head. So I just, splitting ends up being right because exactly this reason. If Steve makes his bar point, now it's going to be a lot tougher when I don't have my back checker split. It's going to be difficult for me to get out. Play the 5-5, making the 5 and the 3. You can also make the 3 and the 2-point. I'm not crazy about that. This is a fairly straightforward play that I think a lot of folks would make. Steve starts slotting the back of his prime. I once more reach forth to the heavens, ask for another favor I do not deserve, and get it inexplicably with double 2s. And I've jumped the gun again. Sorry for the spoiler on this, but you'll see that stepping up is obviously right. Nobody's missing that. You're going to make the 22-point. But how do we play the last 2? And over the board, I was looking at, all 3 alternatives that we can see on screen. Let's just put this one on plus just in case. But yeah, no, it still comes out bad. Like, there are going to be lots of times where I'm getting shots on the next roll. Steve is probably going to be able to clear up one of those 2 blots in the outfield, but not both. So I was worried that slotting the ace point is something that wasn't going to give me enough hit and cover numbers, and if I did get the shot that I wanted, I would be in a more vulnerable spot. But you're slotting the points that you need to make eventually, and that ends up coming out ahead. Steve continues to make his prime with 5-4 and starting the 2-point while he's at it. Not much else for me to do but make the 2-point twice. And a very convenient scoop for Steve, popping out with both. And a 3-1 that at least allows me to start the points. I was too chicken to start with the double twos a few rolls back. 3-2, Steve can consolidate and do two easy things. Make the 2-point and safety up the blot from the double sixes in the outfield. Most plays are reasonably good. I happen to like Steve's. Now I've got a 6-3 where I can either bury a checker and make the 1 point twice or come out. And of coming out, I like making the 4 point more than making the 1 point. I want to make the 4 next anyways. So this entire time I'm looking at this play and thinking about this versus 7-1, 4-1, and I just sort of hated staying back. Like my board was going to continue to crack after this. And yeah, I get a lot of shots, but my board's in a great space if I get some return shots, and XG hates it. I am giving up almost twice as many gammons, and I'm just getting a pittance. No, I'm not even getting wins. I'm losing 11% more gammons, and I'm losing 1% more singles. It just doesn't add up the way that I want to, unless, of course, your opponent misses entirely. With the 5-3, you're going to spite hit your opponent because you didn't have something much more convenient. Instead, Steve elects to play safe, and this is not a spot to play safe. With your opponent owning a dead cube, all the reward is yours, all the risk is theirs, and hitting loose is standout. As it is, I take advantage of my newfound freedom with double 4s.
Oof.
By the skin of your whatever body part you'll use in that.
Steve gets me back.
Barely. Come on, 3-8. Oh, I almost had the 3-8. It was so close. Hang on, I gotta play this.
Oh, you're right.
We established I gotta figure
I
out how to
have
blunder
two
these
choices
things.
here.
Well, the one I can't
3,
screw up.
but one I'm not really considering.
Not legally, anyway.
I can either play bar 22 or I can play 3-1. 8-6, regardless of what I'm toying with here, doesn't really accomplish anything for me. So which of these gives up the least? You know,
I'm ready, right?
Sometimes looking for the best play is giving up the least. And I thought closing out the board was going to do that, but it's just simply tougher for me to escape, and it gives Steve a couple of indirect hitters on unproductive rolls as well, with plenty of ammo in his own inner board. I reduced my liability by stepping up to the 22 point. Steve gets a lovely shake with 4-4. And once again,
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either, Steve. I was rolling them good all match, and this was no exception. Now, unfortunately, the game is going to come to, or rather, the video is going to come to an abrupt conclusion here in a moment. It cuts off in a few rolls, so the outcome isn't
I'm not talking about
in
the checkers.
doubt
I'm talking about,
after
like,
this.
sock me in the face. Like, you wouldn't take a swing at me after that sequence, Paul? Like, honestly, you, like Steve, are a man of upstanding integrity, and you wouldn't swat me in the face after an exchange like that?
That's right.
the way the game goes.
So I got a 5-1, and after some deciding, ultimately decide to
that's a
bear
fair
one
and
off. And the
valid
video is going to cut off here in just a second. From here, Steve actually entered, and it took a few more rolls before I was able to clear my 6 point. And with no more contact and a massive racing deficit, Steve lost the game, and that was the match. So I just very, very briefly entered in a couple of final rolls here. And there's the final. Steve's a ton of fun to play against. This was a great match. I got all the rolls, with a luck of 3.6 in a 9-point match. That's fairly sizable. Played well, but I still threw a couple of very, very early cubes that I'd want back. But onward and upward. Unfortunately, the next match wasn't videotaped either. However, that quarterfinal match against Dougie Roberts, I managed to win that one as well. And coming up next, we'll see the semifinal matchup against Marty Storer. Thanks, everybody. Remember, games only get tougher when you want to improve.